as you are likely familiar, this is the month of Elul, the month in which we are taught from Jewish tradition to prepare ourselves for the High Holy Days, which are rapidly approaching, now just a little more than 2 weeks away. And our tradition invites us to really look at ourselves, our lives, and commit to doing the work to bring about change and transformation, similar to how we might think of the demand of the secular New Year. But our Jewish New Year invites us to really up the ante in thinking of it as a possibility that we might return to the best of truly who we can be. To be sure, this work is personal and it requires introspection and really taking responsibility. No one can do that for us. But the question I like to pose, and that we'll explore in a story in just a moment, is what happens when we encounter obstacles, real obstacles to that work, something that stops us dead in our tracks. What do we do then? So a story. A long, long time ago, as these stories often begin, there was a family that lived in a small house in a small village located on the far side of a grand mountain. And to get by, this family grew vegetables and they raised chickens. And although they were able to sell some to their local villagers, they really made their best profits selling their produce and their eggs at the marketplace of the nearest city, to which they traveled once a month. The challenge was, the city was over a full day's journey away, and it required them to travel on a single winding road that wrapped all around the mountain in order to get to the town, which is on the exact opposite side. And as you can imagine, the market was incredibly important to this family because it gave them the money, enough money, so that they could live month to month with some sense of security. And if for some reason they missed that market day, they would find themselves in quite a precarious situation, unsure that they would be able to make ends meet. So one day in the early fall, the mother of this family prepared to make the journey, loading up the family cart with all of the produce that she planned to sell the next day at this market. As she was preparing to leave, her young son asked if he could join her this time on the trip. He was old enough, after all. The mother thought about it, and then she agreed, and the two of them set off together. And everything was going fine until they made their way around a turn, only to encounter a boulder that had fallen from high above and landed right in the middle of the pass. The mountain on the right, a steep cliff on the left, no way around it. The only way to continue the journey was to move the boulder. And almost immediately, the son saw this as an opportunity to prove to his mother how strong he was. And so he told her, "I will move the boulder, Mom." He walked up to it, pushed his right shoulder into it with all of his might, but the boulder, as you can imagine, did not move. Then he got underneath it, laying on his back and pushing his legs against the mountain, trying to dislodge the rock, but still it did not budge. He then found some large branches and began trying to shove them between the mountain and the boulder in the hopes of dislodging it that way. That didn't work either. Attempt after attempt, nothing the boy tried worked to move the boulder. At which point he came back to his mother, feeling embarrassed, weak, and a little bit ashamed. "I'm sorry, Mother. We're going to have to miss the market this month. There's no way to move this boulder. I've tried everything I could think of." And so the boy's mother responded, "Did you try everything?" "Yes, everything," said the boy. "Are you sure you've tried everything?" "Yes," the boy said, exasperated. "I tried pushing with my shoulder, with my feet against the mountain. I tried jamming branches into the side of it. I climbed on top of it and went to the other side. I've tried everything. Nothing works to move this boulder." And so the mother smiled, as often mothers and fathers do, and said, "Well, I can think of at least one thing that you haven't tried yet." And the boy thought about it for a moment and said, "Well, so what is it? What could I have done?" At which point the mother walked forward, extended her hand to her son, and said, "You haven't asked me to help you yet." With that, the boy and his mother together pressed with all their might against the boulder. And wouldn't you know it that they were able to get that boulder to start to rock just a little bit back and forth, just slightly at first. But then with more momentum, it moved and rocked until finally they were able to push it further down the cliff so it rolled out of their path. With the path cleared, they continued their journey to that market, and they knew that everything would be just fine. If you think about it, sometimes, perhaps even all too often, we can forget that in achieving our goals, we don't have to always go it alone. And in fact, we're often more successful if we reach out to others for help and support. This can happen in so many different ways for us. We can involve a friend, a colleague, a mentor, with a resolution we're working on. As you likely have experienced, resolutions tend to fall by the wayside when we don't have anyone else encouraging us and keeping us strong. When the going gets rough and we feel like giving up, the encouragement of another can be the most powerful incentive to get us back on track. Or even better, we can partner with a friend, a relative, a colleague in the process of taking on growth together. We can be accountable to each other. Accountability coupled with a sense of not wanting to let our partner down is indeed a potent force that will give us a much better shot at staying with our commitments and meeting our goals. If we're honest, asking for help can be intimidating and it can be scary. We can worry that we will be perceived as needy or weak, and we may even worry that someone will say no and reject us if we get up the guts to ask. But the truth is that nearly in every case, nothing could be farther from the truth. Not only can reaching out help us as we encounter an obstacle too large to get around otherwise, but when you think about it, that very same reaching out can give the other to whom we reach the opportunity to make a difference while helping them feel more comfortable to ask for help themselves at a point in their lives. And that makes everybody stronger for the work